Hi, my name is Ty Preiniger, and I'm an instructional technology facilitator at Mesquite ISD. And this is going to be lesson 5 of our Mapping of U.S. History, Part 1. You can find lesson materials at ushistory1to1.weebly.com. And let me show you what those look like. It's best if you have one of these handouts for each student in your class so they can see what is going to be mapped for this lesson. And then you also need your Google My Map ready to go with the Constitution layer already named. So students need to have that layer selected so that whenever we add items to our map, we can make sure that it's on the right layer for the right topic. So we're kind of going with the understanding that at some point between the American Revolution and the time the Constitutional Convention happens, that you'll be talking about the Articles of Confederation in class. And so we can't map every single aspect of the Articles, but we are going to take a couple things that lend itself to mapping. And so the first thing that we want to do is to map the Northwest Ordinance. So your kids will have to have an understanding of what the Articles are. And we'll go ahead and just start with one of the main strengths of the Articles, and that was the Northwest Ordinance. So what I want to do is zoom in so that we can see where all of our states are. And you can use the map that's on page 225 in your textbook if you need another map to look at. But we're going to map the Northwest Territory. So we are northwest of the old 13 colonies, and so we're going to focus on the area west of the Appalachian Mountains. So we'll start by outlining Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, up the Mississippi River, include Wisconsin, go into Minnesota, underneath Lake Superior, include Michigan, and then back to where we started. We'll close our shape there. We want to name this shape the Northwest Ordinance. I want to make it green to represent land. And I'm going to go find a picture. And I like this one because it makes sure that I got the area correct where I mapped these territories. So we know that the Northwest Ordinance kind of gave us guidelines and rules as to how a territory became a state. And so this kind of breaks it down by state. So why don't you give a good description for your kids to put here and maybe add the year 1787. So we know that the Articles of Confederation overall were weak. And after you talk about your weaknesses, you'll probably mention Shays' Rebellion. And so I know that Shays' Rebellion is an uprising that happened in, I believe, Springfield, Massachusetts. I want to drop a marker there. So I search for Springfield, Massachusetts. Make sure you pick the right state. I'm going to click Add to Map, remove this extra stuff. I want to change the name to Shays' Rebellion. I'm going to save that. I want to make it a blue battle marker, just as a sign of conflict. Remember, the war's over, so this isn't a war of the revolution. This is an event that happened after the fact, but it is related because these farmers were in debt. They couldn't pay taxes, and they were losing their farms, and so Daniel Shay led that rebellion in Massachusetts. And nothing really came out of it, but what it did do is it kind of made people wake up and say, man, what if we couldn't have put down this rebellion? Our government is so weak. What would happen if it was overthrown? And our country is just getting started. What do we need to do to fix that? So that's going to lead to the need to call a constitutional convention. So delegates from all the states are going to gather in Philadelphia, where the Declaration of Independence was written. So we can actually search for that place, and it's called Independence Hall. It's on Chestnut Street in Philadelphia, so go ahead and select that one. I want to add it to my map. You can see this is the actual place. You can go and visit where the Constitution was written that summer. I want to remove these details and change the name to Constitutional Convention. In my description, I'm going to go ahead and put the year, and then you and your class can come up with a good description for what you want to put there. I'm going to save it, and then I want to make my marker a gold star or a yellow star, because basically this is the somewhat of the meeting place, or not really capital, but this is where all of the government's business is happening here in Philadelphia at this time. So if we zoom out, we can see that, I wonder why they picked Philadelphia. It looks like a pretty good central location between the northern and the southern colonies. And so, it'd be difficult for delegates to travel back then. So we have to take those things into consideration. So there at the Constitutional Convention, we know that there were several different plans in order to fix the government. Do we rewrite the articles? Do we throw them out completely? What do we do? So we know that there were two main plans that were presented. So the first plan that we want to map is the New Jersey plan. So I'm going to take a marker, and I'm going to drop a marker on the state of New Jersey. I'm going to zoom in. I know that that was one of a colony that was in the middle colonies, but now it's a state. So I'm going to add a marker, and I want to name this marker New Jersey Plan. I'm going to choose a picture that kind of gives us a summary. It says, "We may be small, but we will stand tall." The New Jersey Plan was in favor of equal representation when it came to who would be a part of Congress. So I want to change this from a marker to a circle. And I want this one to be blue. And then the plan in opposition to that was the Virginia plan. So I'm going to add a marker to the state of Virginia. I'm going to search for a picture that describes that plan. And the Virginia plan wanted to base representation on population. So that's what it's talking about when it says represent every man. I'm going to make this marker a circular red marker. So when you zoom out and you actually look at the size of these states, that's how you can remember. New Jersey was a small state. Also in terms of population, not as many people could fit in New Jersey as there could in Virginia. So just kind of remember which states believed in representation by population, because that's going to be important for this last thing that we map. Once they came up with a compromise, and you'll talk about the Great Compromise, how the legislature would, how everybody would be represented, then came into the question of, well, who counts in the population? Will slaves count in the population? And so what we want to do is we want to map something that represents the 3/5 compromise. So I'm going to use my line tool, and I want to map the southern part of the United States at this time. and it's going to be the old Southern colonies. So we'll include Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. Florida still is not a state. So we're going to use this area to represent where most of our slaves are located. So I want to name this shape the 3/5 compromise. I want to add a picture. And I really like this picture because it shows you what the compromise consisted of. That basically if you look at the population in each state, only 3 out of every slaves would be counted towards population. And you can come up with a better definition right here and add that to your description. So I'm going to save that, and I'm going to add a specific picture. So this time I want you to search for 1790 population map. I want you to add this picture to your marker as well. And what this is it's a population density map of slaves back in 1790. And what I like about it is you can see that up here in the north, Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, none of those states even had slaves. So if you're trying to look at which states benefited from being able to count slaves in their population, it's not these states in the north. It's those southern states because that's where all the slaves were. And particularly Virginia and South Carolina have these red regions tell us that those areas had more than 50% of the people there were slaves. So that would have a huge impact on the number of people that are counted towards representation in the government. So I want to save that. One more thing, I'm going to change the color. So we know that it's not land, so we're not going to really make it green, but we'll just make it stand out like that. So we didn't map very many things, but the Constitution, there's not a ton that you can map, but the things that we can that kind of give us an idea, I think that it'll help our kids understand the context of what we're talking about here.